Imagine offering up your son or daughter for a top secret government experiment and then realizing down the road the implications that it would have, not just for your own child, really, young or old, doesn't matter, not just for your own child, but for the rest of the world. All right. And that's what the Abigail Project was. Now, the Abigail Project, before I get into it, I would just like to give a special shout out to my friend Dews. I would like to thank him so much because he's actually helped me formulate some of what's going on here, as well as providing me with some data of some documents that we will be referencing here as well too. But one of the main things that I want to talk about here and cover is the fact that there's so much going on with respects to the way in which secret experimentation occurs that it's almost like it's right in front of our faces and we know, but we're so focused on not knowing because we see it right there. I know that might not make too much sense, but you'll see what I'm saying. Now, before I do that, again, thank you to Dews, and I'd also like to just very quickly say we do have a Patreon. We have a fantastic members-only episode coming out shortly, and we look at a lot of things that would, very controversial on the public end. We don't want to take a risk getting taken down or anything, so we do a lot of private videos, and we touch on a lot of subjects there that we can't really do here. But anyways, let's jump right into it. So, the Abigail Project, okay? In other words, ether, torture, or many different things. Now, the reason why it's called this is because there was a general by the name of Albert Westers, who had a daughter that literally he offered up his own daughter for an experiment in Area 51, which, by the way, has to do with a biosphere experiment that we're going to be looking at as well too, that is still quarantined within the Area 51 location to this very day. Now, there's a lot to jump into here, but one of the first things that I want to start with, simply because of the fact that there's just so much to come about here, is that there are a handful of underground networks and systems that have now been claimed to not have been used since the Second World War. But what's happening here is that the technology being used to make a lot of these deep underground military-based tunnels, that some have connections, like physical, literal connections to some public tunnels in some cases, just because of the way that it's being built. It cannot be averted in any particular way. The reason for this is because they're using, I guess we could call nanotech or programmable matter, as in the black oil and the oil spill stuff, which you'll see if you're a member, you'll know what I'm talking about here. But what you're going to find here, guys, is ultimately they're using this programmable matter to literally turn a deep underground military-based tunnel into a secure one within a matter of minutes, because of how quickly this can shapeshift and form, very similar to that of maybe a good example would be Venom in Spider-Man, how the symbiote can morph to what it would like to adjust itself to shape-wise physically. But also a good example would be the Xenobots within the Transformers film with Stanley Tucci and Mark Wahlberg. With that being said, though, I bring that example up because those are probably the best examples here, but these underground military tunnels and bases are being utilized to be literally adjusted when need be. They're literally being transformed for top secret bases, and then when people discover them, literally everything just disappears and it goes into the quantum realm. And that's what the programmable matter can do. And I know that sounds like something out of a cartoon, but again, if we can isolate the most molecular isotope at the most minuscule level, in which makes up the fabric of this dimension that we live in, you can change that. Now, let's take a look here according to theconversation.com, and I quote, "Rumors abound of complex tunnel networks in major Australian cities created in the wake of the Second World War. Larger air raid shelters were often located close to urban settlement but escaped use. They remained in public memory as mythology. Bunkers can be located across Australia, from Dover Heights in Sydney to Prospect and Glenelg in Adelaide. Over 20 air raid shelters exist in Brisbane alone," end quote. Now, here's the thing. I did the research. There's not as many bases as this article is saying. That's why this article is not getting specific. This article is trying to downplay what's really going on here with this complex network of underground tunnels. Now, here's the thing I want to mention too. I want to take a look at this right here, ufopages.com, a great indexing site for a lot of different things, sort of like biblioteca plates. Acronym for Secret Terrestrial Hypothesis. The STH hypothesis suggests that UFOs are secret technology produced by terrestrial manufacturers, generally military, but possibly also private, or more exotically, a breakaway civilization or alien civilization hidden underground or underwater, end quote. Now, I bring this up because what we notice here is that ultimately a lot of what occurs is that the experiments going on within Abigail's project and things like this have to do with trying to cover up a lot of this. And so what they're trying to say here is that, oh, well, it's not exactly an alien. This is how they get around the legal ramifications. It's not exactly an alien because, it's from here. But again, what they don't tell you is that it's been genetically altered and things like this, such as what happened to General Albert Wester's daughter as well, right? Now, here's the thing as well, too. While Abigail was within this particular quarantined area of Area 51, she required very quickly, she was being injected with many different things, chemicals, black goo, adrenochrome, you name it. Now, I'm taking a chance saying that publicly, but saying it once, I should be okay. With that being said, there were tons of trucks within Vegas in Nevada seen going to Area 51. This was all the way back in the 50s and 60s, constantly feeding this being. She was turning from a human into some type of extraterrestrial monster, very skinny on the body, but the head was massive, with telekinesis and telepathic powers, which you'll see demonstrated as we examine some footage and things like that in the members only episode. With that being said, the thing about Abigail was that she was no longer Abigail. She was losing consciousness. She was losing the change in the structure in her bones and things like this. Now, here's the other thing. The thing I've been bringing up so much, the 51555? Which I read the comments, trust me. Some of you have been saying, is he saying it incorrectly? Yeah, so anyways, that frequency is being emitted. That was being emitted from her from a top secret DIA report, a DIA document that leaked, which the CIA slowly slipped into the recently declassified UFO files. And what they do is they make it a report of a report, right? Now, I also want to take a look at something as well here too. This is something else very noticeable as well. Fox News. Secret Pentagon projects reveal government looked into UFOs, wormholes, and other bizarre anomalies. Again, not necessarily bizarre when we look at it, but let's take a look anyways. The Defense Intelligence Agency, now let's take a look at this, released 38 research titles on January 18th following a Freedom of Information Act. All right. The research was funded by the Department of Defense under its Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, right? Again, anytime we see an acronym, just be vigilant. We got a problem. Some of the more interesting projects include invisibility cloaking, traversable wormholes, stargates and negative energy, warp drive, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions, and an introduction to the statistical Drake equation. Now, here's the other thing as well, too. It says here, they seem to be more concerned about space travel than actual defense of airspace, end quote. Why is that the case? This is a public department, which is sort of shady and secretive, but again, technically speaking public, because, all it takes is one random person to make a Freedom of Information Act request, and you can get it, so clearly it's meant to be predisposed to the public, right? But take a look at that. How come they're not concerned about our own airspace? When I say our, I'm not saying, Canada, US, I'm talking about the world. They're not concerned about the airspace, the safety of it. Instead, they're concerned about space travel. You know what that tells me? They got our airspace down packed. They got it on lock. You know what I mean? A UFO may come in, as we've talked about in the past, about certain frequential galaxy barriers put around our galaxy, and they need to, give the green light as they approach. If not, they cannot come in due to some energetic and frequential barriers. But, one may slip in every so often, very similar to how some type of, in theory, a border would work, technically, right? But, again, to say that, so many are just coming in and going as they please, absolutely not. They got this airspace on lock and they know it. And on top of that, if we take a look at express.co.uk, Area 51 exclusive, insider confirms black projects underway in top secret military base. Now, what's interesting about this article is that this gentleman references an ex-personnel soldier who worked there, references a certain part that was quarantined and closed off. The only thing he knew about that area was that it was constantly being sent. There were trucks of food just going, and trucks of liquid, and what seemed to be dirt he couldn't explain. What was that? It was the thing that starts with an A, and it was also it was also black goo as well, or programmable matter. They were trying to feed Abigail by containing her because she was growing and mutating so quickly. I don't know what to call it. Did she turn into an alien? Did she become an interdimensional being? It's very difficult to say. Now, I want to take a look at something very interesting. There's 108 pages here, but on page 94, excuse me, just took a sip of water there. On page 94, this has to do with ether technology. the gravitational, and I quote, force can be neutralized by producing an inversed field of electromagnetic nature. Any engine or rocket capable of producing such a field will escape gravity and limitlessly actuate itself, guided simply by field orientation. Weight cancellation is possible by causing a charge of electrons extracted from the body to be degravitated to rotate around that degravitated body. Such a degravitation is theoretically accompanied by the neutralization of the effect mass, thus the inertia of the whole system. In consequence, a minimal acceleration in this state provokes phenomenal speeds, end quote. Two things I want to point out here. You remember Project Carrot? Every time there was some type of little load placed on it, the smallest amount of weight or a load placed on it, it would suddenly immediately levitate off the ground and activate. That's what's being referred to here, because if ether technology could be harnessed, that's what would occur. But more importantly than all of this, what we're seeing here is that this is exactly the same type of chemicals and materials that were experimented on Abigail far beyond or far prior to this document being released, or this this PDF or document even going onto the internet, far before the internet was even a real thing. Was even a thing, to so to speak, right? And so what we're seeing here is that it's almost like Abigail was being experimented on, not in a way of kind of, genetic revitalization or manipulation, but as a matter of fact, it seems as though this programmable matter was able to get a hold of the very confines of the ether within this dimension that altered Abigail's humanoid body. Now, what you're going to find about the Abigail Project is that you're going to see it's like, the McPherson tape. Oh, it doesn't exist, or like the Alternative 3. The members will know what I'm talking about. Oh, it doesn't exist because there's footage of it, but it actually ended up being a movie. A director came out and said they directed it. Guys, this was a very great way of covering things up back in the day. You know what I mean? This was a fantastic way of looking at all of this. Now, the other thing too is that to this very day, there is seen very, very odd types of material of black goo and different things like this that have been sighted around the Area 51 area, in addition to some fallen metallic pieces that do not correspond with any of the current periodic elements on the periodic table. All right, elements on the periodic table. My apologies. And so what we're seeing here is obviously Area 51 is known for a lot of different things, but that one quarantine zone that no one can still go into, that even former soldiers, as of, the last 2 to 3 years making public testimony, seems to correspond with that, of some type of technology or chemical or liquid that was experimented on Abigail that literally fluctuated and altered the ether within this universe. And it's very scary to see because, again, the things that we don't know how to mess with are the things that are the most dangerous, especially when we're very naive about it, and many other things as well too. Now, let's take a look here at when we look at the Abigail Project on the PSYOP angle. Look at projectabigail.org. We're going to see, look, we aim to make healthy, sustainable communities accessible to everyone. Now, I'm not trying to put this particular movement, website, or any of it down. Not even close. Nothing whatsoever. With that being said, notice how these things are thrown up on the top of internet search results, even if it's not Google, doesn't matter where. This is how you know a cover-up is rampant, when you use different search engines like DuckDuckGo, or even, the grayer part of the internet, let's call it, and you still have some trouble figuring out, what exactly occurred within the Abigail Project. Now, if any of you can actually find it more than what I did, I would be more than happy to, have you post it in the comments, and we can all converse and, engage as a community. But ultimately, what we're seeing here is that, again, there is tons of evidence to suggest that these programs that are being used, these ATIP programs, are being funneled to keep Abigail alive. Now, the question then becomes too, why does she need to stay alive? Could she not die? Have they messed with the ether so much that literally if you shoot at her, or if you you try to literally, I guess we could say, murder her, so to speak, that she actually gets stronger? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but again, if we go back to the episode of a few days ago of how if you harness the energy of the ether to protect a ship, to protect an alien craft, the more you shoot at it, the stronger the energy field actually gets. And the members will understand this probably better than most. But again, because we see some of the stuff we've analyzed and we've looked into. Does she have some type of energy field around her? So they have no choice but to keep quarantining it. And on top of that, what we're seeing is that in Nevada, the government keeps buying up more and more land within the Area 51, Groom Lake area. Within the, many different areas, Dolce Base, all that kind of stuff. Within that area, they're buying up more and more land. Is it for more experimentation? Absolutely it is. But at the same time, that place where, again, Abigail has been quarantined since the 50s, the general's daughter, has never been unquarantined or has never gone unguarded for more than, I think, like 30 seconds, even then. You guys see what I'm saying? So again, I'd like you to let me know what you think, because again, it's very interesting and peculiar to say the least. But at the same time, there's just so much here as well too, that it's almost like, my God, I mean, I don't know what to say at this point. You know, it's kind of like we're evaluating all of this and we have no choice but to say, this is what's happening. We have the testimonials, we have the transcripts, we have the documents, we have the consistency of the ether energy. I don't know how much more we can really look into here before saying to ourselves, okay, wait a minute, there might be a deception of, again, the STHs, right, of the secret terrestrial hypothesis about how certain aliens are created here. But again, we have to define alien. It has to do with the psyop manipulation of how words are perceived and how different things are corresponding so dramatically and in many different ways as well too, right? And when we look here at the New York Times and the lost history of one of the world's strangest science experiments, again, this has to do with the Biosphere 2 experiment, which again, very mysteriously just kind of shut down. Because look, the project would later be dismissed as a folly and a waste of effort. And yet, 25 years on, it's an experiment worth rediscovering. Biosphere 2 might have some lessons to offer about managing Biosphere 1, our planet, end quote. Now, the people working on Biosphere 2 were also seen going into the quarantine areas of Area 51. Was the project a success? Could there have been some knowledge or something of the sort that these experts from Biosphere 2 could have maybe helped with the Abigail situation? It's hard to say. But it's absolutely possible, right? And we're seeing that. Like, I mean, take a look here at the academictimes.com. Organoids show how human brains become massive compared with other primates. Very quickly, by using miniature brains artificially grown from stem cells, researchers have for the first time identified how the human brain manages to grow several times larger than those of other large primates. Their study uncovered a key molecular switch that triggers human brains to develop triple the number of neurons of chimps or gorillas, despite much of their developmental biology being the same. End quote. You know where this was first discovered? This first came out of a Nevada public institute that had to do with, that was very well known, I should say rather, with covering up for a lot of Area 51, I guess we could say scientific discoveries meant for drop feeding. We see that in the Project Care documents as well. They write it right in front of our faces, guys. They literally say, we're going to, modify this to this most minimal degree so that when it gets out into society, people will accept it if it comes out on a larger degree many, many years later, decades, even sometimes centuries later, right? And we're seeing that right here. Why is it that we need to look at, using miniature brains artificially grown from stem cells? I mean, there are many different reasons, but ultimately, it's almost as if this has to do with Abigail, because again, the people that have been doing this research have went to Area 51's quarantine area, and on top of all of that too, Abigail's brain keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it seems like this is a form of justifying public studies to be used for secretive operations and apparatuses. So I'd like you guys to let me know what you think, and we will catch you guys later. Cheers.